Hey there, and welcome to Tales by June, where hearts break, heal, and sometimes seek revenge. Let's begin today's story.
Hey, before we begin, let me know where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. And if you enjoy this kind of content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more. They say love is supposed to be the sweetest thing a human can feel. But for me, love has been nothing more than a wound that refuses to heal. My name is Charlotte, and for the last 5 years, I've lived in a marriage that exists only on paper. I am the wife of one of the most powerful billionaires in New York. To the world, we are the perfect couple: graceful, successful, untouchable. But behind the tall glass walls of our mansion, there is only silence. I wasn't chosen. I was forced into this life. When his company faced collapse, our families made an arrangement. My father's influence and investments would save him, and in return, I would become his wife. I was young then, foolishly hopeful, believing that maybe in time he would see me. Maybe he would learn to love me. But his heart had already belonged to someone else. His first love, the woman who left him, but never truly left his soul. From the moment I entered his world, I knew I was an outsider. His friends never hid their disdain. They smiled at me with their polished teeth, whispered cruel jokes behind my back, and treated me like I was temporary, like I didn't belong in their golden circle. And he, my husband, never defended me. He never called me his own. Every night, I walked through our enormous mansion, my footsteps echoing against the marble floors, reminding me just how empty my life had become. I would sit at the dining table, where a dozen chairs surrounded me, but only mine was filled. His chair remained untouched. He often stayed out late, business dinners, private parties, or nights at his office. And when he did return, it was with a cold nod, a tired sigh, and a door closing between us. One night, I couldn't hold my silence any longer. I stood by the window, watching the rain fall when he walked in, removing his tie without looking at me. "Did you eat?" I asked softly. "Yeah," he replied, not even meeting my eyes. "Where? Does it matter?" His tone was sharp, dismissive. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "It matters to me." Finally, he turned, his gaze cold as stone. "Charlotte, stop trying. We both know what this marriage is. You got your status. My company survived. That's all this is." Those words cut deeper than any blade. I wanted to scream, to ask him why he thought I married him for power, when all I wanted was his heart. But I stayed silent. Because what use is a voice when the one person you want to hear it refuses to listen? I learned to build walls inside myself. I dressed like the perfect wife. I smiled for the cameras. I played my part in his world. But at night, when I lay on my side of the bed staring into the dark, I prayed for just a little warmth, a little kindness. But prayers, in my life, are only whispers that vanish into emptiness. And so 5 years passed. 5 years of loving a man who would never love me. But everything was about to change. Because the past has a way of returning. And soon, the woman he loved, the woman I had been compared to all these years, would walk back into our lives. And with her return, the cracks in my broken marriage would no longer be hidden. That night, as I sat in the cold silence of our home, I made a promise to myself. If fate was going to test me, I would not break. I had endured enough humiliation, enough loneliness, enough pain. My name is Charlotte. I may have been unwanted in this marriage. I may have been ignored, disrespected, and unloved, but I was about to show them all that I was not fragile. This is my story. I wasn't always this hollow version of myself. I grew up in a home filled with love. My parents weren't billionaires, but they were respected, kind, and deeply in love with each other. I used to watch the way my father looked at my mother, how he always reached for her hand when they crossed the street, or how he pulled out her chair at dinner, as if she were the most precious thing in the world. That was the kind of love I dreamed of, the kind of love I thought I deserved. As a little girl, I believed in fairy tales. I believed that one day a man would walk into my life and love me just as fiercely as my father loved my mother. But life, I would learn, isn't a fairy tale. It's a deal, a bargain, a contract. I met my husband at one of my father's business events. I still remember that night. I wore a soft pink dress my mother had chosen for me. I wasn't used to such glamorous settings, but I tried to fit in, holding my glass of juice while the room sparkled with laughter and clinking champagne. Then I saw him. He was standing near the bar, tall and commanding, with a presence that pulled everyone toward him. People surrounded him, eager to please, to impress. But he didn't smile. His expression was sharp, serious, as though the world itself bored him. When our eyes met, my heart skipped. I was young, naive, and easily enchanted. He walked toward me, and for a moment, I thought fate had chosen me. His voice was deep when he spoke. "You're Charlotte, right?" I nodded, almost breathless. He gave me a polite smile. Polite, not warm. "I've heard about you. You're your father's pride." And just like that, I fell. I fell for the idea of him, for the way his presence filled the room. I convinced myself that his indifference was mystery, that behind those cold eyes was a man waiting for someone to love him. I thought I could be that someone. I didn't know then that his heart already belonged to another. When the deal was made, my father investing in his failing empire in exchange for marriage, I didn't resist. I told myself this was destiny. My parents looked at me with concern, but I assured them I was happy. I believed it with all my heart. The wedding was grand, lavish, flowers in every corner, cameras flashing, guests whispering about how perfect we looked together. I wore a gown of white silk, the kind I had dreamed of as a girl. My mother's eyes filled with tears as she kissed my forehead, whispering, "Be happy, my love." But when I looked at him, standing at the altar in his immaculate suit, his jaw tight, his eyes distant, I felt the first crack in my dream. He didn't look at me the way a groom should look at his bride. He looked past me, as though I were nothing more than a responsibility. Still, I held his hand with trembling fingers. I told myself that love could grow, that with patience, with kindness, he would see me. That night, in our new home, I waited. The room smelled of roses, the bed covered in petals, the way tradition demanded. I sat in silence, my heart racing. When he entered, I stood, nervous, hopeful. But he simply removed his jacket, loosened his tie, and said in a flat voice, "You can take the bed. I'll use the other room." I felt my heart collapse inside me. Not a kiss, not a touch, not even a glance, just walls. The first year of our marriage was the hardest. Every morning I woke up hoping for a change. I prepared his breakfast, sat across from him, searching for conversation. "How was your meeting yesterday?" I would ask. "Fine." "Will you be home tonight?" "Not sure." That was the rhythm of our life. I chased shadows. He walked away, and still I loved him. Blindly, foolishly, I loved him. His friends made things worse. They looked at me as though I were a mistake, a temporary guest in their golden circle. At dinners, they spoke around me, never to me. Sometimes they would laugh at inside jokes I didn't understand, their eyes flicking to me with smug amusement. Once, one of them leaned close and whispered, "Enjoy it while it lasts, Charlotte. He'll never love you." I smiled politely, but inside, I broke a little more. I cried in secret, hiding my pain from the world. I didn't want my family to know I was unhappy. I didn't want my mother to regret giving me away. So I endured. I wore my best dresses, painted on my best smile, and walked beside my husband like a beautiful ghost. And through it all, I prayed that one day he would turn, really look at me, and see the woman who had given him her heart. But he never did. And now, after 5 long years of silence, loneliness, and humiliation, his past, the woman who once held his heart, was returning. And something inside me whispered, "This is where everything changes." The night of the party, our mansion was filled with glittering lights, crystal glasses, and the laughter of people who had never known what it meant to be unwanted. I wore a black gown that hugged my frame, my hair swept into a polished bun. I looked like I belonged, like the perfect billionaire's wife. But inside, I carried years of silence, years of being treated like a shadow. When I entered the grand hall, every head turned. But not because of me. Because of her. She stood at the entrance like a ghost resurrected, the woman I had heard about for years but never met, his first love. She wore white, of course, as if mocking my place, as if daring me to compare myself to her. Her eyes scanned the crowd, and when they landed on my husband, her lips curved in that sweet, innocent smile. My husband froze. I saw it. The air left his chest, his mask slipped for the first time in years. His friends rushed toward her with delight, surrounding her like she was royalty, returned to her throne. And me? I stood there, invisible. One of his friends glanced at me with a smirk. "Well, Charlotte, looks like the queen has returned." The others chuckled, sipping their champagne. Another leaned closer, his voice low but sharp. You did your job well, though. You kept him company while she was gone. The laughter stung. My throat burned. My hands trembled as I gripped my glass, trying to keep the mask on my face. But then, she walked toward me. She did. Her perfume announced her before her soft, practiced voice reached me. You must be Charlotte, she said, tilting her head like a saint. I've heard so much about you. Thank you for taking care of him. Thank you, as if I were a babysitter, as if 5 years of my life were nothing more than borrowed time. And when I looked at my husband, I saw no defense, no anger on my behalf. Only silence. His eyes, his entire being, were fixed on her. Something inside me broke. No, not broke, ignited. I set down my glass with trembling fingers and stood tall, my voice cutting through the room. Enough. The laughter stopped. Heads turned. His friends exchanged startled looks, their smugness faltering. You've mocked me for years, I said, my voice firm. You've whispered behind my back, treated me like I don't belong in this circle. And I let you. I stayed silent because I thought dignity meant patience. But tonight I've had enough. I turned to her, that woman wrapped in innocence. And you walk in here with that smile, pretending to be gentle, pretending to be grateful. Don't you dare thank me. Don't you dare act like I was a placeholder. I am his wife. For 5 years, I carried the weight of his silence, his coldness, his indifference, and I survived. Her face paled, her smile wavering. And then I looked at him. My husband. The man who had stolen my youth, my dreams, my heart, without ever giving me anything in return. Shame on you, I whispered. Shame on you for standing there, letting them laugh at me, letting her humiliate me. You may have forced me into your world, but I am not your doormat. Not anymore. The room was dead silent. His friends avoided my eyes. Even she looked rattled, her lips pressed tight. He stepped forward, his voice low. Charlotte, enough. Don't what? I snapped, my voice shaking but strong. Don't speak the truth? Don't embarrass you in front of your precious friends? You embarrassed me for 5 years, every day, every night. Pass with your silence. No more. For the first time, I saw something in his eyes. Not anger, not indifference. Shock. The party continued, but I walked away. My heels echoed against the marble as I climbed the stairs, my gown flowing behind me like a trail of fire. I didn't care who watched. I didn't care who whispered. When I entered our bedroom, I locked the door. He came later. I heard his footsteps, the sound of his hand against the knob. Charlotte, his voice was low, almost pleading. How open the door. I closed my eyes, tears slipping down my cheeks, but my voice was steady. No, not tonight. You don't get to walk in here like nothing happened. You don't get to own me, silence me, and then come to my bed as if it's your right. You lost that privilege tonight. There was silence on the other side, a long, heavy silence, and for the first time in 5 years, the power was mine. I sat on the bed, my heart racing, my hands trembling, but my spirit burning with something I hadn't felt in years. Strength. That night, everything changed. I was no longer the unwanted wife who begged for love. I was the woman who had endured the storm and finally decided to fight back. And whether he liked it or not, the game between us had just begun. The morning after the party, I didn't wake up to my husband's cold indifference. I woke up to silence, his silence. But this time, it wasn't the usual kind. This silence was heavy, uncertain, as if he no longer knew what to make of me. I didn't wait for him. I dressed in a sharp navy blue suit, one that spoke of authority instead of fragility. No more gowns chosen to please him, no more delicate smiles. I left the mansion before he even rose from bed. I went to my father. His office had always felt like a fortress. Mahogany walls, shelves lined with books, the faint smell of cigar smoke from his younger days. When I entered, he looked up from his desk, his brows furrowing. Charlotte? At this hour? I sat opposite him, my posture straight. Father, I need to speak with you. He studied me, concern flickering in his eyes. Has he done something? Did he hurt you? No, I said firmly. Not in the way you think. But I can't live as his shadow anymore. No, I need to stand on my own. His lips pressed into a line. Charlotte, I want you to name me your heir. The words hung in the air. My father leaned back in his chair, startled. You've never shown interest in the company before. I didn't think I had to, I admitted, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. But I see now. I've been wasting my life waiting for love that will never come. I don't want to be a fragile ornament in someone else's world. I want to build something of my own. I want power, Father. The kind that can't be mocked, the kind no one can strip from me. For a long time, he said nothing. Then, slowly, he smiled. Not the gentle smile of a father, but the approving smile of a businessman. Maybe I underestimated you, he murmured. Perhaps this marriage was a curse in one way, but in another. It woke something in you. Fine. I'll draft the papers. You'll start training with me tomorrow. A spark lit inside me. For the first time in years, I felt seen. Not as a wife, not as a shadow, but as a woman with her own fire. When I returned home that evening, my husband was waiting in the living room. He was still in his tailored suit, tie loosened, whiskey in hand. But his eyes, those cold, distant eyes, were different, sharper. Watching me. "Where were you?" he asked, his voice low, controlled. I set down my bag calmly. "Why does it matter?" "Because you're my wife," he said, his jaw tightening. "And my wife doesn't disappear without telling me." I laughed, a sound I hadn't let escape in years. "Your wife? Now I'm your wife? 5 years. You couldn't even look at me as one. Don't start playing husband now." His expression faltered. He stepped closer, his voice rough. "Charlotte, what's happening to you?" I met his eyes without flinching. "I'm finally waking up, and if it bothers you, that's your problem, not mine." He stared at me, his fingers tightening around the glass until it threatened to break. For once, he didn't have a response. I turned and walked upstairs, leaving him behind. That night, as I closed my bedroom door and shut him out once again, I could feel his presence lingering in the hall. He was confused, unsettled, maybe even intrigued. For 5 years, I had been the silent, obedient wife. But now, I was something else. Something he couldn't predict, couldn't control. And I knew it. I had planted the seed of change. And soon, he would see me, not as a burden, not as a placeholder, but as a force he could no longer ignore. The weeks that followed were a blur of long hours, boardroom battles, and lessons in power. My father didn't hand me the company as a gift. He tested me. He threw me into meetings with men twice my age who dismissed me the moment I opened my mouth. They called me the little girl in high heels. They assumed I was only there because of my father's blood. But I learned. I studied every file, memorized every contract, sharpened my words until they cut like blades. And slowly, the board began to look at me differently. Slowly, the whispers of "she won't last" turned into "she knows what she's doing." For the first time in years, I felt alive. When the day came, the company gala was arranged to announce me as the new CEO. I stood in front of the mirror that evening, wearing a crimson gown that clung to my figure like fire, my hair down in soft waves. I looked at my reflection and almost didn't recognize the woman staring back. She wasn't fragile anymore. She wasn't waiting for love. She was power. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers, filled with applause, champagne, and cameras flashing. I stepped onto the stage beside my father, who introduced me with pride swelling in his voice. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "the future of this empire, Charlotte, my daughter, and your new CEO." The applause thundered. I smiled, gracious and steady, but inside my heart pounded. This was my moment. And then I saw him. My husband. He stood at the back of the crowd, his expression unreadable, his eyes locked on me. For a moment, I faltered. My smile nearly slipped. What was he doing here? After the announcement, as I mingled with executives and reporters, I felt his presence before I saw him. Then suddenly, he was beside me, tall and imposing, as if he had every right to stand at my side. "Congratulations," he said softly, his voice edged with something I hadn't heard before, vulnerability. "But you should have told me." I turned, my face calm, but my heart beating faster. "Why?" "Because I'm your husband," he replied. His eyes searched mine, almost pleading. "You didn't even invite me on your big day, Charlotte. Do you know what that felt like?" For a moment, I was stunned. He, the man who had ignored me, humiliated me, left me to eat alone for years, was now wounded because I hadn't invited him? I let out a cold laugh. "Now you know how it feels to be invisible." He flinched, just slightly, but enough. "I don't need your approval anymore," I said, my voice low, steady, "and I don't need you at my side. This is my world now. You can keep yours." Then, deliberately, I turned away and joined a circle of business leaders, leaving him standing there. But as the night went on, I could feel his eyes on me, following me, unsettled. His friends hovered around him, whispering, but he didn't join their laughter. Not tonight. He stood in silence, a man watching something he couldn't control. Later, when I slipped out to the balcony for air, I found him there already, leaning against the railing, drink in hand. The city lights reflected in his eyes, but they weren't cold tonight. They were conflicted. "You've changed," he said quietly. I tilted my head. "Did you expect me to stay your silent, obedient wife forever?" "No," he admitted, his voice rough. "But I didn't expect this." His eyes lingered on me, softer now. "I don't even recognize you anymore." "Good," I said simply, turning away, "because the old me is gone." I walked back inside, leaving him alone on the balcony. That night, as I drove home alone, I couldn't help but think about the look in his eyes. For the first time, it wasn't indifference. It was regret. Confusion. Maybe even longing. But it was too late. He had chosen his silence for 5 years. He had chosen his past love over me. Now, I was no longer the girl who begged for his heart. I was the woman who had built her own throne, and he was finally beginning to realize what he had lost. My days were no longer defined by silence in a cold mansion. Now they were filled with strategy meetings, contract negotiations, and boardroom discussions where my voice carried weight. The office became my battlefield, and I was winning. I spent late hours reviewing documents, walking through the glass-walled corridors where employees greeted me with respect. And for the first time, respect wasn't borrowed from my father's name. It was earned. But power always attracts attention. Ethan walked into my life as my new business partner, a brilliant strategist with a charming smile and a sharp mind. He wasn't intimidated by me like so many others. In fact, he treated me as his equal. "Charlotte," he said one evening, leaning over a report with a grin, "if we restructure this division, we could triple the revenue in a year. You'd make every competitor cry." I laughed, the sound surprising even myself. "You sound too confident." "I've been called worse," he teased. For the first time in years, I felt light around a man. Not because I wanted him. No, my heart was too scarred for that. But because he reminded me I was more than a shadow. I was worth listening to. But someone else noticed. My husband. He started appearing at my office unannounced, his tall figure filling the doorway, his sharp gaze settling on me like a storm. One afternoon, he arrived just as Ethan and I were walking out of a meeting. Ethan handed me a file, brushing my hand lightly as he did. My husband's eyes darkened instantly. "Who's this?" he asked, his tone like ice. "This is Ethan, my business partner," I said calmly. Ethan extended his hand. "Pleasure to meet you. Your wife is extraordinary." My husband didn't shake his hand. He simply stared, jaw tight, before replying, "Yes, and she doesn't need anyone crossing lines with her." Ethan blinked, surprised, but smiled politely and walked away. When we were alone, I crossed my arms. "That was unnecessary." He stepped closer, his voice low and rough. "No man should look at my wife like that." I scoffed. "Your wife? You ignored me for 5 years, and now suddenly you remember I exist?" His eyes flickered, torn between anger and something else, something almost like fear. "I'm not going to let anyone take you from me, Charlotte," he muttered. I almost laughed. Take me from him? I was never his to begin with. But then came the funny part. The man who had once treated me like an accessory was now trying awkwardly, desperately, to be close. He started showing up with coffee in the mornings, placing it on my desk like a nervous intern. "I didn't know how you take it," he admitted once. "So I bought all 3 options." I stared at the tray of coffees, bewildered, before shaking my head. "You've lost your mind." He smirked, a boyish expression I had never seen before. Maybe. And then there was dinner at my parents' house. For years, he had kept a distance, polite but detached. But now? He was the perfect son-in-law, helping my mother set the table, asking my father about his health, even telling little stories that made them laugh. "He's changed," my mother whispered to me as we cleared the dishes. "He's trying, Charlotte." But I shook my head. "Don't be fooled, Mother. This is just guilt." Yet, when I looked at him that night, laughing with my father, I felt a pang in my chest. Because for the first time I saw the man he could have been all along. That night, as we drove back in silence, he finally spoke. "You hate me, don't you?" His voice was quiet, almost broken. I didn't answer. He turned to me at a red light, his eyes filled with something I had never seen before. Raw, painful longing. "I know I ruined us," he said, but I can't stand watching you slip away from me now. The light turned green. I looked straight ahead, refusing to let him see the war inside me. You should have thought of that 5 years ago, I whispered. And just like that, the wall between us stood firm again. But for the first time, I could see cracks forming on his side. My husband had started trying everything. It was almost comical, watching a man who once lived in stone-faced silence suddenly scheme ways to get close to me. He started appearing at my office under the excuse of business. He would lean against my doorframe with that infuriating smirk. "Need lunch?" he asked one afternoon. "I've already booked the best restaurant in the city." I didn't even look up from my paperwork. "I'm busy." "Then I'll have it delivered here," he said casually, pulling out his phone. I sighed. "You're impossible." His lips curved. "That's your fault. You made me this way." Sometimes it was funny, like when he tried to cook dinner one evening and nearly burned down the kitchen. I walked in to find him fanning smoke with a towel, muttering curses. "You?" I raised a brow. "Cooking?" He gave me a sheepish grin, flour smeared on his shirt. "Don't laugh. I was trying to surprise you." I couldn't help it. I laughed until my stomach hurt, and for a moment, just a moment, it felt normal. But life has a way of testing us when we least expect it. The business gala was grand, gold chandeliers, champagne towers, and the city's most powerful faces gathered under one roof. I arrived with Ethan, my business partner, his presence professional yet confident at my side. And of course, they were there. My husband, his circle of smug friends, and her. His first love, draped in diamonds and innocence, her arm brushing his as if she still owned him. I held my head high, refusing to cower, but then her voice cut through the air, loud enough for everyone around us to hear. "How shameless," she said, her lips curving sweetly. A married woman, openly parading with her lovers. Her eyes flicked to Ethan. "Does your poor husband know you cheat on him so boldly?" Gasps echoed around us. His friends smirked, nodding, whispering like vultures. "She's been waiting for this," one of them sneered. "We warned you, she's not one of us." I froze, my throat tightening. For a second, the room spun. 5 years of humiliation, of being ignored, of standing alone, it all weighed on me at once. But before I could speak, a voice thundered across the hall. "Enough!" It was him, my husband. Everyone went silent. His friends stared, stunned. The woman beside him blinked rapidly, as if she'd miscalculated. He stepped forward, his eyes blazing with fury. No one gets to speak about my wife like that. She is loyal. She is strong, and she is worth more than every single one of you combined." The room gasped. My heart stopped. For the first time in 5 years, he defended me. I stared at him, shocked, a lump forming in my throat. My hands trembled, but not from fear this time. From relief. But I wasn't done. Not anymore. I stepped forward, my voice ringing clear. "You all think you can humiliate me because I stayed silent for too long, but let's talk about your secrets, shall we?" The smirks vanished. I turned to his friends. "You," I pointed at one. "The one who called me shameless? Should I remind the room how you've been siphoning company funds into your gambling debts? Or how about you?" I turned to another. "Your wife would be shocked to know about the assistant you keep in a secret apartment downtown." Gasps. Whispers. The men's faces paled. And then I turned to her. His first love. The woman who had haunted me for years. "And you," I said, my voice sharp as glass. "The innocent little angel, returned to reclaim her throne. Should I tell them where you've been all this time? That you left him, not because of circumstances, but because you were living off another man's fortune in Europe. A man twice your age. A married man. And when he grew tired of you, you came crawling back here, thinking you could play savior." The room erupted in murmurs. Faces turned toward her in shock. She stood frozen, her painted smile cracking. "It's not true," she stammered. "She's lying." But no one believed her. The whispers grew louder. Her mask shattered. I stood tall, my chest rising, my voice steady. "I may have been silent once, but not anymore. I will not be your victim. Not now, not ever again." The hall was electric. My husband's eyes, those eyes that once ignored me, were locked on mine. This time, not with indifference, not with coldness, but with something else. Pride, respect, and something dangerously close to love. I turned, walking away as the crowd parted for me. Ethan followed at a respectful distance. But before I left the hall, I glanced back once. My husband stood frozen in the center of the storm, his friends disgraced, his first love exposed. And in his eyes, I saw the man who had finally realized what he had lost. The gala ended in chaos. Whispers followed us as I left, heads turned, reputations crumbled behind me. But I didn't look back. That night, I returned to the mansion. I expected silence, as always, but instead, he was waiting. My husband stood in the middle of our bedroom, his tie undone, his eyes stormy with emotions I had never seen before. "Charlotte," he said, his voice raw, "please, don't walk away from me." I crossed my arms, my back straight. "Why not? You had 5 years to fight for me, 5 years to defend me, and tonight, only when she attacked me, only then, you remembered I was your wife." He flinched. "I know, I was a fool, I let my past blind me. But tonight," he stepped closer, desperation in his voice. "When I saw them tearing into you, when I saw you standing there alone, I couldn't take it. I realized I'd rather burn everything I have than lose you." I swallowed hard, my heart warring with my pride. "Words, husband. Just words. You've given me plenty of those. If you want me, if you want this marriage, you have to show me." Silence. And then, to my utter shock, he dropped his expensive suit jacket on the floor and knelt down in front of me. "What are you doing?" I whispered. "Starting where I should have started years ago." His voice was hoarse, "Proving that I'm not too proud to fight for you." I blinked, stunned. This was not the man I had married. The next days were surreal. He tried to cook again, this time managing pancakes that looked like disasters but tasted almost edible. He proudly presented them at breakfast. "See?" he grinned. "Not burned this time." I raised a brow. "Barely." He laughed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Work in progress." He began leaving little notes on my desk in the mornings. Clumsy, awkward notes that almost made me laugh. "Don't forget lunch, or else I'll kidnap you." Another, "You look stunning today, even if you're scowling at me right now." He even started showing up at my father's office, volunteering to help with projects, earning nods of approval. My mother called me one evening, giggling like a teenager. "Your husband brought me flowers today, Charlotte. Can you believe it?" I could, because he was trying, failing, fumbling, but trying with every ounce of his pride stripped away. One night, as we sat on the balcony overlooking the city, he handed me a glass of wine. For once, there was no arrogance in his voice, only sincerity. "I don't know if I deserve forgiveness," he said softly, "but I want to spend every day earning it. I don't want the ghost of my past anymore. I want you. Only you." I stared at him, searching his face for any trace of a lie. But all I saw was exhaustion and truth. Slowly, I set down my glass. My heart was racing. My walls, the ones I had built brick by brick, trembled. "You really are impossible," I muttered. His lips curved into the softest smile, "but you're still here." For a long moment, I said nothing. And then, I reached out and took his hand. His breath hitched like he'd been waiting 5 years for that touch. "This is your second chance," I whispered. "Don't waste it." His hand tightened around mine. "I won't." And for the first time since the day of our wedding, I believed him. We sat there under the stars, not as strangers bound by a contract, not as enemies scarred by silence, but as husband and wife. And maybe, just maybe, as the beginning of the love story I thought I would never have.